Good morning, East Bay. What is happening in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano counties? Learn about what's happening in our communities, an in-depth conversation so you know what's going on. We're talking to government, economic, political, nonprofit, and business leaders here in the greater East Bay. I'm Jared Ash, the host of the Capstone Conversation. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Capstone Conversation, where we are looking at exciting things that are happening in the greater East Bay area. Today, I am joined by Tim Murrill of the Solano Napa SBDC. Tim, why don't you go ahead and tell us, what is the SBDC? What does the organization do? And then tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, Jared. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. So the SBDC, it's short for Small Business Development Center. And actually, there are about 1,000 of us around the United States, usually divided up by county. So in my case, my center serves and supports small businesses in Solano and Napa counties. And I guess the shortest definition I could give is the SBDC is here to support the success of small businesses. Sometimes that can be an entrepreneur that has a good idea that they want to turn into a business. Um, Other times, and this is probably the majority of where we do our work, it's with small businesses that are trying to get to the next level or are trying to overcome some obstacles. And I don't know of a small business owner who isn't trying to do that. So basically, the way we deliver our services is in a couple of ways. We provide a lot of training for small businesses. We do between probably 6 and 8 live trainings every month, covering a number of topics pertinent to a small business, everything from marketing and how do you go get clients to, maybe you need some capital to help fund your growth or get you to the next level. HR related support. This, state of California tends to have lots of laws and lots of new laws regarding employment. And so we help folks through, some of those challenges, and then, other issues that are very relevant right now, like how do I get and keep good people? If any of the small businesses that we work with, that's probably in the top two issues that they're dealing with right now in this environment. So anyway, so that's a little bit of what we do to talk about my background.
Yeah, dive into it. I love your story. You're an entrepreneur. You've worked for big companies along the way, and I think it tells a good story of how you're helping small businesses and your perspective.
You bet. So I was with FedEx for 16 years. That was my first, real professional job, I guess I would say, and was started in customer service for them. And then I went over into the sales and marketing area. FedEx was an awesome company to be with, especially during the time I was there. Because of the growth curve that I saw, us go through, and just a really strong culture there. And so my last position with FedEx was the managing director of global sales. And so I had about 300 salespeople, about $1 billion of revenue responsibility. And all that was great. I learned a ton. I was proud to be with them. But it was a job that also had me on the road most of the time. I was away from home about 3 weeks out of every month for the last few years, and I decided that wasn't the best thing for my life, my family. I have 4 kids and a wife at home, and so that'll be I have to make a change. So so I left there. I actually got recruited, did some things in electronic commerce with a technology company, and then I decided it was time to take some of my things I'd learned in those experiences and start my own company. So along with a couple of partners, started a company called Prediction Analytics, and we developed. But today we would call them AI models. At the time, we just called them predictive models to help national chains, retail chains, and just retailers to figure out when they wanted to grow in a certain region of the country, we would help them identify uh, the demographics, the psychographic patterns of their best performing locations, and then we would go find where those new locations should be, that they should open up new spots. And so we were very, very accurate in the sales forecasting that we did. We would be plus or minus 5% of going out about 3 years, which is really important. If you're about ready to write a check for a couple $1 million for a property and build something, you want to know that you're going to get a return. So it was really fun and exciting work. We built that company over, well, we had it for about 4 years. I'll tell you how it ended in a moment. But along the way, I mean, we built a great solution, a great team. We brought in McDonald's, Applebee's, the Gap stores, Cracker Barrel, number of other restaurants and retailers along the way. And the demographic data that we used was from Experian Corporation. Most of us know them as the credit score people, but they're a huge data provider. And so anyway, I got very interested in how we were was using that data to do the work that we did. And long story short, they made us one of those offers you couldn't refuse, and so we sold. So that was just a wonderful journey to go from kind of okay, idea, what kind of solution do we need to provide, build the team, grow it, and sell it, all packaged up in about 4.5 years. Now, I told you the rosy side of that story. The other side of that story was that in my career, that was the most difficult thing I had ever done career-wise. I had no idea. I figured that coming into this, new business, that I would know most of what I needed to know. And I found out that I only knew about a small fraction of what I needed to know. Because in my other jobs, like at FedEx, I mean, I just had to run the sales and marketing piece. I didn't have to worry about, things like, funding and product development and finance and HR issues and things like that. I found out very quickly that there's a lot you need to know. And, it's the old saying that it's lonely at the top is very, very true. And I found that out firsthand. And so anyway, with that, when I sold the business, I decided, what am I going to do now? I retired, and as it turns out, I retired for about 2 weeks, and then I was going to be doing some consulting, and I stumbled one day on the SBDC office. At the time, they were hosted by Solano Community College, and just kind of was walking my dog on the campus one day, and I saw this sign that says SBDC. So I stopped in and talked with the director at the time, and what do you guys do? And I said, well, we provide these services to our businesses, and we don't charge anything for it. I said, you don't charge anything for this? Really? Where were you when I needed you? I would have been all over this resource when I had my company. But anyway, I love the concept. I mean, because we are a nonprofit, we get funding from the SBA, from the state of California, and from all of our cities that are in our counties. They all support us so that we can deliver those services at no cost. And I just love that concept. And I said, all right, I'm in, I'll be an advisor and do this. And it was finally, even though, trust me, it was not a lot of money, that wasn't the point. It was finally an opportunity for me to serve our community and help contribute to our economy, and also that I wanted to spend the rest of my career helping small business owners, because now I knew and I understood how challenging it was. And that really is what got me into it. And then I did that and some other consulting. And then a couple of years later, and all the SBDCs, by the way, have hosts. So it was hosted by the college. And then that changed to the Workforce Development Board of Solano County. And they somehow got connected with me and said, hey, we're hosting, would you be interested in being the director? And I'm like, if I need a full-time gig again, but Yes, I believe in what we're doing. So I took that on, and that was about 5 years ago. I have loved it. And so anyway, I just when we started, the SBDC here had been dormant for a couple of years. And so I'm like, okay, where are we starting from? We had about, well, I remember the number. We had 89 active clients that we were working with at the time. And we had like, I think we had five advisors and two of them weren't working out. So we had three advisors then. And so I'm like, we got to get the word out. I mean, this is a great resource. We got to build this thing. So I just really, put a plan together to focus on that and brought in some additional funding to allow us to grow the center and the support that we provided. And so, here we are 5 years later. We have about 2,100 active small businesses that we're working with now. And we have a team of 30 business advisors that work, one-on-one with these clients, and just have built a just a great team, and I am so happy about that. Just the how it's come together, and we have been really blessed, and that allows us to just serve this community as well as we can. And we're not done yet. We're still doing lots of work and lots of new things ahead, and I could talk about some of that later if you want. But anyway, I'm sorry, that's a very long answer to your question, but that's how I got here.
No, but that's a great story, and it also talks a little bit more about what you do and some of the challenges you did highlight for small businesses. I'm a one person shop, and sometimes you just need to ask a question like, "Hey, I have three clients that are paying me this month on, within a week of me sending them an invoice. This company over here, they're 60 days past due. This one's 15 days past due. Okay, I'm not concerned about 15 days past due. I'm concerned about the one that's 60 days past due. How do I follow that up? What's the proper way? How can I speed them along next month so it's not always 60 days so they get into a cycle?
Yeah.
Those are all questions. Or California tax fees, or how do I judge, like, what is my return if I go to this networking event? Right? I go to a lot of the chambers, their state of the city events that they host, because it's good to be seen, to meet the local politicians, be seen in each community, but they add up. And as a solo entrepreneur, that impacts, my take home pay. And those are all just questions that it's good to talk to somebody about. And so, one of the things that I actually picked up from a previous introduction with you is a mastermind, and I'm a big believer in accountability partners and masterminds. And so I know you have that as part of your coaching service. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love those examples you gave, Jared. Like cash flow management, huge piece of this, marketing, and there's always like more opportunities. We're just deluged with, hey, you need to do this social media thing, or you need to come to these 12 events. It's like, wait a minute, I have so much time and so much money for marketing. What is, how do I be really smart and purposeful about how I spend both my time and money. And yes, a really cool part of what of the programming that we've added is what we call roundtable groups. And we have actually six of them going currently, and when we're getting requests for more as this grows. But what it is a group of usually between 10 and 15 small business owners that meet once a month for a couple of hours, facilitated by one of our advisors. And we go through, we do a little bit of best practice, sharing, or maybe some training, or programs that are available, or grants or things like that at the beginning of it. But then we get into the meat of it, which is talking about some of the wins and challenges that each small business has, and that opportunity, as you just referenced, Jared, to ask a question about like a client that's not paying. And we don't have all the answers, but around that table, right, the chances are that you've got someone that's had that same exact challenge and what they did. And, it's just that collective wisdom around the table to be able to get answers and help and sometimes encouragement too, right? Because again, this is tough, man. The small business ownership stuff, it's definitely an up and down situation. So it also kind of provides that. But I think the greatest value of it is just that, what'd you call it?
Mastermind.
Mastermind. Yeah. Yeah.
You call it a round table. Same concept.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, there's a saying, someone smarter than I said, none of us are as smart as all of us. And that really comes true in these roundtables. So yeah, that's something we will continue to provide and to grow.
It's the official name mastermind, or the concept, comes from the famous book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, because he took that from
Mhm.
the rich people like Andrew Carnegie and JP Morgan, who always had a mastermind group to run, like, is this deal good, right?
Yeah.
uh, and I think it's growing out there for people, and it could be for small businesses, but it could also be for employees who work for small businesses that want to get to the next level too, and do that. You also mentioned in I want to come to one issue, because I know it also affects city government, that you had mentioned, is keeping and retaining employees and finding the talent. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there for small businesses? Why is it still happening? We're post COVID now long enough.
Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely, this is a very tight labor market for sure. And if you just look at the demographics, the population demographics, unfortunately, this is going to be with us for a very long time, because for quite a while now, there's been more people passing away than there have been new babies born. And those lines of crossing, right? And so talent supply is a challenge. And I would just say that how well a company does, and this small business does in this area of attracting and retaining talent, I believe is the probably the biggest differentiator that a small business can have, if your business requires people. Right now, if you're sole proprietor, that's not, you don't have to worry about that. But if you want to grow, and that's part of your strategy, this is something you really do have to get right if you want to maximize your potential to growth, right? And so we're really starting, and I mentioned at the outset that one of the things we're doing is most of our time is actually with existing businesses, and this is an area, helping our small business owners to do better at that, to create a very positive culture where people want to come and they want to stay, is really important. Like, one of the things we're going to be offering this year in 2024, and I can't remember if we talked about this earlier, Jared, or not, but there's a program from the Gallup organization called Clifton Strengths. And basically what that is a talent assessment tool that you answer some questions, and it provides a report and it really will pinpoint what you are naturally good at. In fact, what you're naturally best at. What are your talents? And they're all of us are unique, right? We have a different talent DNA, if you will. And so that helps to sort of understand what those things are. We all have, some ideas for sure of what we do well, and we probably get feedback from other people, but it's still not as clear, maybe, or complete as we would like it. And so this assessment provides that. And so anyway, I actually took the time last year to go through about a 3-month certification process to become a Gallup certified strengths coach. And now I'm training a couple of our advisors to help, to do that work as well. And so anyway, that's what we're providing, the opportunity for individuals, whether you're a sole prop, to just take this assessment and then do a coaching session to really talk about how do you really leverage make the most of what you have. The tagline I think of is, the Capital One commercial. It says, what's in your wallet? What's in your wallet?
Yeah.
That's what this is, right? It's knowing what's in your wallet and leveraging those and, really maximizing, what those are. Well, that's one way, because what happens is if you know what your, talents are, then you could spend more of your time using those and less time on those things that you're not great at, that you bang your head up against the wall and get frustrated with. It's like, no, let's find someone else to do that stuff if we can, right? Let's figure out how to minimize those spending time and effort on those things, and then maximizing those things that are my superpowers. And so it helps the business owner, but it also helps if they have a team. It helps you understand how to fully maximize those employees, and what roles and what projects do you give them. Because for two things: number one, you're going to have better results, right? Revenue and profit growth, chances are, if you do that well, are going to be better. But the other piece is, if someone uses their strengths, they're going to be more engaged. More engaged means they like what they're doing, and they're not going to be spending time looking for other jobs, right? Because they're happy. So it's a very practical thing, but it's a very important thing, especially right now.
I just recorded an episode. It'll premiere before this, so listeners could hear it back on January 17th when we're talking about goal setting. And that guest referenced that employers just often fail to realize that in addition to a little bit of money for employees, they want growth opportunities, right? That lead to more money, but they want to have, most people want continued education. They want to network in their field, and that companies aren't providing that. And for little perks like that, if you go above and beyond, you're going to retain people. And they don't realize retaining that worker will end up saving them more money than they would spend on any of the programs. Just what you're saying reminds me of that, what that speaker said.
That is absolutely true. It's kind of a hidden cost, but if I think the data shows that depending on the type of role that it costs, and your other speaker may have talked about this, but it basically it can cost up to the cost of a year's salary sometimes, depending on the role, because of the time it takes to recruit, to train, and get that person up to speed. By the time they're really humming along and producing something, it takes a very a lot of time, not to mention all the institutional knowledge that walked out the door, right? That when that person goes, that you may never get back. So this is kind of like one of those, I guess, one of the what you would call a soft thing that really is a hard thing. Most people, a lot of business are like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I'll pay them and they'll work for me, and they'll do what I say, and it's like, no, that environment has changed. It's not like that anymore. It used to be people were lining up to fill out applications to get jobs, and that it's really not like that. The role, it's definitely a, what would I call it?
Employee-centered market.
Yeah, it's an employee. You bet. The employees are the ones that have more power right now. And so anyway, that I absolutely agree with that, and it's a super important area to focus on.
Well, and I know we're talking about it in context of small business, but I know a lot of the government related people who are listening, put it in perspective to your hiring needs, whether it's police officers or other talent in your teams. What we're talking about here, I think it relates. I do want to pivot a minute though and talk about your partnerships. Talk about your partnerships with the community college still that exist. and talk about partnerships with any other local government agencies too.
Yeah, great question. That's been a real key, those partnerships to us kind of building back up our local SBDC center. So one of the things we did early on was form back to the roundtable concept. I formed a roundtable with every economic development leader in our county and every Chamber of Commerce president, just to bring them together to talk about what was needed. What are you hearing? I did, we didn't want to build this program in a vacuum. We wanted to understand, where, if we were going to put on training programs, what would be most helpful for their areas. And so that beginning of just that process really has led to really good partnership, that if when we do programs or we're administering a grant program or something, man, these folks are just awesome at getting the word out right to their network. And that's a big part of this is you need that local, city by city avenue to get the word out about different programs. So yeah, I mean, it's constant. And then the other piece of that is that every city in this county contributes financially to our center every year, and that allows us to do what we do. I mean, going from 89 clients to 2,000, that costs some money to provide that kind of support. So that's been pivotal. And so they provided, that piece, but a lot of different things. You asked about the college. We've gone in and worked with like their cosmetology department. Cosmetology, something you would never, you normally think of, but most of these folks going through their cosmetology program, at the end of it, many of them want to open up their own shops, or maybe they're just going to rent space, but they don't know, anything about, how to manage the finances, or what kind of licenses, in whatever city they're going to be in, that do they need, or insurance, or how do you get clients and stuff. So like we come in and do a program there to talk about the running, how to run the business part of cosmetology. That's been a really good thing. There's a child care certificate program through the college, and we've done the same thing with anyone that wants to open up a child care area. And then with the county, it's been a great relationship on a number of projects. One of the large funding acts that was enacted by Congress through the pandemic was called ARPA. It's the American Rescue Plan Act. And that provided, lots of funding that came through the counties. Our county, Solano County specific, well, Solano and Napa County, actually, they both used a pretty good portion of those funds to support our small businesses, because they knew how tough the pandemic was on them with the closures and, all the PPE, all the, personal protective equipment that folks had to have. I mean, it was just, it was a very difficult time to run a small business. And anyway, they provided quite a bit of funding for us to provide extra services, and also provide a number of grants that we administered to help folks to stay afloat during the pandemic, especially those that had to close the door, especially the personal services related businesses who struggled the most. So yeah, that's some examples, but it has been a really good partnership, environment with our cities and county.
So let's talk about budget. You're government funded, you supply your services for free, which is great. The governor has announced in January that the state is 37, 39 billion short this year and has to cut money. I know the city of Benicia is going through a March tax measure, and they're looking at, if it doesn't pass, they're going to have to cut several staff positions that are essential positions that they just can't afford anymore. Vallejo, questionable if they go through another bankruptcy. How does that affect your funding? Didn't mean to scare you if I did, but you're providing great services to the community. So how does all of that impact your organization?
No, that's a great point, Jared. If there's something that keeps me up at night right now, that's it. Because it's starting with California, which is we get about 30% of the funding, that we need from them. Yeah, the tide's turning in this state. And then the other piece is the funding we get from the SBA is actually closely tied to the population. Well, what's happening in our state? Lots of folks moving out. So that funding's going down. So and I absolutely that is caused us to we while most of our all of our advising right now is no cost. I always say no cost instead of free, because it might be free, but free to them, but it's not free. Right, because we have to pay our advisors and our staff to do what they do. But we are and have been working on some programs for some of our larger businesses. By the way, the definition of a small business from the SBA is up to 500 employees. So some people think of the SBDC, if they do know about us, as being like the people that help startups or really small companies or just sole proprietors. That's not true. We work with several larger businesses as well, and so we actually have and are putting together more programs that we are going to charge for. Now it's probably going to be less than what you're going to get in the open market, but it still is going to be high value, and is that funding that we get from charging for some of those services is going to go in the pot to help us continue to provide the level of service we've been providing. So, for example, going back to that, I was talking about the Clifton Strengths Assessment. We're going to charge for those assessments and that coaching, and it's not a lot. It's like going to be $100 to do that. Probably the best $100 these business owners will make all year, to be honest with you. And then beyond that, if they have a team, we'll come in and either provide those assessments for the entire organization, and specifically work with the leaders. Right, the key pivot point in a company, if you have employees and managers, is that manager role, right? That person is what makes the difference of whether someone is engaged and productive, and you retain them. And so much we can do around that. So anyway, that's just one example of something. Another thing we're going to provide is there's something called the entrepreneurial operating system, and it is a system. It's kind of based on a book that was written maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago, called Traction. And it lays out an awesome process for a business that's usually it's between 20 and 150 employees. And it's very helpful, especially for a business that's grown really rapidly over the last few years, maybe. It's like, how do you keep track of what everyone's doing? Are we all on the same page? Are we all marching to the same drumbeat and going the same, direction? And how do we make sure that happens and everyone knows what their role is on this bus, right? And so anyway, there's a whole process there, and that's something that we know is super valuable, that we're going to be offering in the second half of this year. Again, that'll be something we charge for, and that'll help supplement some of our funding.
Right. And hopefully I won't keep you up at night now worrying about all of that, but I want to pivot to another type of funding, a startup, whether the startup is a tech startup, but particularly I think in the retail space for restaurants, storefronts, their biggest cost is upfront, right? It's the buying. If you're a restaurant, you're buying tables, you're buying kitchen supplies, you're buying ovens, forks, right? You don't have to buy forks every 6 months. You have to buy some food. You have ongoing costs, but it's those upfront costs that take a lot to start a business. What advice do you have for those small businesses who are looking for that initial capital? How do they get it? And how do they manage that long term with that upfront cost? You don't have cash flow yet.
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. Yeah, that's pretty typical, request that we get. I have an idea. how do I make that work? And the first thing we do with someone that comes to us with that is to really sit down and help them, assist them with developing a business plan. Business plan is just that basic roadmap that says, okay, you're going to start a restaurant. Where are you going to start it? What area? Who are you going to serve? How much you're going to charge? What are all the startup costs? And really put together a pro forma of how much you need up front, and then what your cash flow needs to be, and a growth plan for your staff and equipment and all of that whole thing. So that's a big part of what we do, is to kind of get them started with that, so that they know what they're getting into as well, right? Like, here's what's going to happen. It's not just a magical, you're going to go lease a building, put a sign up front, and hire a few people and it just all works. It's never easy, right? It's always harder than you think. So we try to do some planning and some realism. But specifically to your question about the startup capital, we'll walk them through various options. There's so many different factors that we look at, starting with things like your credit score, and what is your previous experience. If you want to open a restaurant, have you had experience managing in a restaurant? Because the bankers are going to want to know that you know what you're doing, right? They're betting on you as the horse, right? And so we have to look at those things and then determine, depending on how much capital they need, what their experience is, credit score, all those variables, what financial institutions would be a fit, or maybe we determine you may not be fundable through a bank. So, you may need to tap into friends and family. You may need to tap into, your house, if you own it, you have equity in your house. We'll just basically lay out the various options, but it's, there's no two startup situations that are the same. They're all different. And so that's the work that our advisors do to really understand who they are, what they bring to the table, what they're trying to do, and help them navigate a plan, not only to get started, but also just to have that relationship, to be with them through the journey as they grow and as they encounter challenges or what have you. There,
That
a lot of people do ask, I have to say this, if we get a lot of requests, with especially through the pandemic, there's been so many different grant programs out there. Unfortunately, those grant programs, almost, I would say 99.9% of them are for existing businesses. There aren't grants typically for startups. I can only think of like maybe two over the last 4 years that you had, and they weren't very large. But yeah, you kind of you have to do it the old fashioned way. And I wish there were more grants for startups, but that's just not how it's worked out.
Yeah. Tim, anything else that our guests should know that I haven't asked?
No, I don't think so. This has been fun. I guess I would just encourage them that if you're a client of the SBDC, you're listening to this, I want to say thank you for trusting us and giving us a chance to help you. And if you're not, I seriously encourage you to check us out. You can go to, in our case, go to SolanoNapaSBDC.org. That's where you can go, and when you get to the homepage, you click on a little button that says, apply to be a client, and you'll answer a few questions, and that will take you through the process of becoming a client, and then you can get an advisor assigned to you. Take advantage of that. It's available to you. And the statistics say that this is beneficial. We probably have, most of us have heard of the data that says that only about 50% of small businesses make it past 5 years. I hate that statistic. I want to change that, right? We want to improve that. But the other piece of data that we should know is that businesses that work with an advisor or a business coach, that gets help, maybe they're part of a mastermind group or what have you, that will increase their chances of getting past 5 years by 50%. 50%, right? That's a big number. And so I encourage you, whether you reach out to the SBDC or you have a business coach or whatever, you don't have to have all the answers, right? Again, none of us are as smart as all of us. So I encourage you to do that. I know I don't. Like I said, when I had my business, after even being responsible for $1 billion a year at FedEx, oh my gosh, I needed help. Like I said, I would have been all over this resource. And so I encourage anyone that's, feels like that would be, helpful to reach out to us. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Jared.
We'll put the link to your website in the show notes, as well as I'll try to gather up some of the other of your counterparts in the other counties in the Greater East Bay, so we can link to those too. And I want to end with a quote that you said early on in the beginning. And I wrote it down. You're here to support the success of small businesses. And you really told a good story about that today. So really appreciate all the work you do in the community. Shows you where tax dollars are going for good purposes to help our businesses grow, and just your service in the community. So thank you, Tim, for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Jared. Thank you.
Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Ash, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.